Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, Louisiana's politicians literally had a ball last weekend, the carnival type in Washington, D.C. But by Monday, there was a different bounce as the legislators and governor convened a special session in Baton Rouge. We'll look at both events tonight. We'll also examine the growing presence of freestanding emergency rooms and what that means to consumers, as well as questions about some spending at the Jefferson Parish Finance Authority. With one major project finally completed, our Future Watch segment looks at remaining street repairs. And as parades begin to parade tonight, we'll look at the first big weekend of carnival season, which includes not just carnival balls, but basketballs. On the court for us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Katie Moore, investigative reporter, WWL-TV Channel 4, Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, and Stephanie Grace, columnist, The New Orleans Advocate. We're going to go over to Katie first. And I mean, this is something that's new to this community that we're starting to see pop up in different areas of our city. Freestanding emergency rooms, not urgent care centers.
Not urgent care centers.
Freestanding emergency rooms. So what are they exactly?
They're emergency rooms. The only difference is they're not connected to a hospital. So while people may look at them and say, that kind of looks like an urgent care, maybe that's where I should get my health care, maybe that's where I should go if I need, things that you don't necessarily have to go to an emergency room for, like stitches or things like that. Things that you could get at an urgent care, it's really important that you actually go to an urgent care as opposed to one of these locations. It's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cost, if you have Medicaid, the taxpayers a lot of money if people start utilizing these things in a way that they should be going to doctor's offices or urgent cares. But they look a lot like urgent care centers. I mean, they're bright and shiny and, they have all those emergency markings on them. But, I'm sure as you all know, there's an urgent care on just about every other corner now. And they have markings that are similar. They say urgent, badly needed care. It's the same thing as emergency in a lot of people's minds.
Emergency?
You can go there. You can go to these emergency rooms. But what you can't get at these emergency rooms are full treatment for a heart attack or stroke. Those time-sensitive illnesses, we're hearing from physicians that you really should go to an emergency room attached to a hospital. But just about everything else.
Associated with a hospital, there's two of them that have Ochsner's name.
They do. They do.
So people are going to think it's an Ochsner emergency room.
It is an Ochsner emergency room. Now, it's run by a different company. These emergency rooms are being run by a company called Adeptus Health, which is out of Texas. They have hundreds of freestanding emergency rooms around the country. They're the largest provider of them. Ochsner has partnered with them because in Louisiana, we technically don't license freestanding emergency rooms. We only license off-site emergency rooms. So they have to be connected to a major hospital in order for them to operate here. And that's something that DHH is really closely watching. Let me talk. They're very closely watching this development of these off-site emergency rooms because they don't want it to be a situation where people are confusing them with urgent cares, and it's costing people, the consumers, and taxpayers a huge amount of money.
So cost is an issue.
It is.
Because ER care is the most expensive care. So that definitely is an issue. So people would be getting bigger bills, including facilities fees. This is an issue you got into in your reports about this.
Absolutely, and we're going to be touching on that in another report that's going to be airing actually tonight at 10 on WWL about these facility fees. And most people don't even know what they are. They've never heard of a facility fee. And basically what that is hospitals are allowed to charge a facility fee anytime you have a procedure that's done in their facility. It's something that Medicare reimburses for because it costs so much to run an emergency facility and to run a hospital. The physicians have to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You have expensive equipment that hospitals have to buy. The standards are a lot higher for hospitals. So it costs a lot of money, and this is something that Medicare reimburses. Insurance companies used to pick up the tab for a lot of these facility fees for people, but now with the advent of high deductible health plans, people are now feeling those facility fees and seeing them on their bills firsthand. So I think that's one of the reasons that it's come to the forefront.
So who should go to these then? Not people who need stitches, not people having heart attacks, but like people with what kind of conditions?
Anything in between. And I'm obviously not a doctor, so I don't want to give people medical advice. But
what are they aimed at? Who's the target customer?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question because that's been a source of controversy because if you're not really providing, the truest time-sensitive emergency care, and you're not telling people to come there for stitches and things like that, a cold, a sinus infection, an ear infection, then what exactly purpose are these serving? Now, anybody who has an emergency that's not one of those time-sensitive illnesses can absolutely go to these places. They can do CAT scans if you fall and hit your head and make sure that you don't have a concussion. If you have a broken arm and you think it's a little bit more serious than what you could get at an x-ray at an urgent care, you can go to one of these facilities. If you have a bone sticking through your skin, you should probably go to an emergency room connected to a hospital. I'm just thinking out loud.
In our neighborhood, in Mid-City, we've been eyeing an Oxner facility that's gone up. It's taken a long time for it to open it. But it's more than just an emergency room. I mean, they advertise it's going to have X number of beds, too. I mean, this is bigger than the urgent care. It's a 2-story building. It looks like a small hospital.
It essentially is a tiny little hospital, but those aren't inpatient beds. They have beds, but those are beds where they can put you while they're sort of triaging you in an emergency. So, you know, like emergency rooms have to have a certain number of beds that they can stick people in while they're trying to figure out and assess what further treatment they're going to need. Same thing with these facilities.
So if someone in that neighborhood has severe chest pains one night, aren't they going to instinctively want to go to the nearest spot? And are you saying when they go there, they're going to say, well, we can't handle this?
Yeah, it's a possibility. It depends on what the situation is and what the person's experiencing. But if that does happen, then they have to have the mechanism in place to transport you somewhere else. Now, where you go is another question, and that we haven't really delved into yet.
Well, the Secretary of Health, the State Secretary of Health, Dr. Gee, is very skeptical about these. And one thing that she does note is that the message for years has been, don't go to the ER, particularly, you know, if you have a sore throat or something like that. But now we have all these ER standing, and so she is definitely worried about the cost. And then, as you pointed out, these are freestanding. They're not attached to the hospital, which could actually lose time if you really are in a very serious situation and critical one, you know, a crisis one. Absolutely,
and that's her secondary. Well, her primary concern is delayed care, whether or not this represents a delay. If you're having a heart attack, you need a stent put in. You're having a stroke, you know, you need something addressed right away. This isn't the best place for you to go.
So you guys are continuing to look at this. We'll see another report tonight.
Yes, not just off-site ERs, but we're taking a look at medical billing and medical problems in general. David Hammer's doing that report tonight.
And isn't East Jefferson opening one too?
They are. They've got one that's almost around the corner from East Jefferson.
And there's one already open in Marrero. Are we going to see a whole lot more, do you think?
I don't think so. Not right now. They're testing the waters, I think.
Right. Okay, Katie, thanks a lot. Let's go on over now to Stephanie. And legislative special session began this Monday, and still we're Friday, and there's still no answers to our budget situation.
Nope. We're almost halfway there, or about halfway there. It ends on Wednesday. It convened Monday night, February 13th. Governor John Bel Edwards apologized to legislators and said, you know, for the second Valentine's Day in a row, you're going to be with me, not with your loved ones. And I think maybe it was feeling a little more like Groundhog Day to a lot of people, because here we are with the budget yet again. And this year, what they're addressing is a $304 million shortfall for this year, for the rest of this fiscal year. So basically between now and June, the end of June. There are no new taxes on the table, but there's still the same debate, which is really, you know, how much do you cut? How much do you, in this case, take from what's called the rainy day fund, which is kind of a pot set aside for an emergency, rainy days, and the governor keeps saying it's raining, people. He would really like to avoid cuts to K-12, further cuts. There have been many cuts already to K-12 education, higher ed, corrections. Some of the Republicans who he's been battling with over these budget matters since he got into office are saying, no, you should take less from the rainy day fund. That's not fiscally responsible. We can cut more. He keeps saying, show me the cuts. Today they were debating, well, let's count some empty positions as cuts, and the Democrats were saying that's not real money. So it's really, you know, we've really kind of had this debate over and over again about how to get the budget in control. And, you know, cutting is hard, and taking services away from people is hard, and that's, I think, the bottom line.
Now, his bill did not make it out of the House Appropriations Committee.
It didn't. A Republican bill. He wanted to take $119 million from the rainy day fund. The Republican bill was $74 million. That's what's been happening. The Appropriations Committee is pretty heavily stacked with his adversaries on these issues, and these bills have to originate in the House Appropriations Committee. So what's been happening is that once the Senate gets its hands on them. The Senate is much friendlier to John Bel Edwards, so that's kind of where the negotiations start. So expect, starting really tomorrow, we'll be seeing the Senate
So they're going to
action.
be at work on this over the weekend.
They will be, yes.
Now, something else that happened this week was a senator resigned.
He did, under a lot of pressure. A man named Troy Brown, who represents the kind of Assumption area. This is someone who has had, he's a Democrat, he has had 2 domestic violence convictions in the past year, really. One involving a girlfriend and one involving a wife. So it's kind of a sordid story. But he, the convictions were pleas. He pled no contest. So that's basically an admission, but there are also misdemeanors. So he has been saying, look, I'm getting counseling, I've apologized, I deserve to stay. You've never thrown anybody out of the Senate for being convicted of misdemeanors, only felonies. And really most of the Senate, John Bel Edwards, they've been demanding his resignation. You know, they deal with domestic violence legislation, they have to face victims. And there was a resolution to expel him that was going to be heard Monday. And there was a hearing the other day in which his lawyer basically said, you know, made all these arguments, said it was only misdemeanors, he has due process, you should hold this hearing like a trial. And really everything she tried to do to kind of set up the rules for this hearing Monday, the full Senate rejected. And, you know, both Democrats and Republicans speaking out against him. So he really saw the writing on the wall and resigned. And basically said, you know, they're treating me unfairly, I'm still the victim. It's interesting, he pretty much played the victim till the end.
I've done a lot of investigative reporting on him.
You have to tell us.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
And one of the things that I find interesting in this whole situation is that nobody's really talking about the fact that he doesn't seem to live in his district.
There's that too. Yes, he's a
so
controversial guy in general. Yes.
He, you know, was arrested the second time for not allegedly, admitted to biting his wife on the arm at the house that they share in Geismar, but it's not even in Senate District 2.
Right.
So
that's another controversy. The other incident was in New Orleans with a girlfriend at the Bio Classic in 2015.
So what
He
happens
punched
with
her.
his now vacant seat?
So now there will be a special election. So for now it's vacant, and that's one of the things he argued, that you're disenfranchising my constituents. And you know, it's not really clear that his constituents, he was reelected, I think, after the residency issues came out. So
there are already 3 or 4 names being named for people that are running. So
exactly.
they're not going to be disenfranchised.
They were ready for this.
They're not going to be disenfranchised for long.
That's true.
Okay, so now the
Yes.
focus is on our budget, and then the special session ends Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Okie doke.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Stephanie.
Just
Over to
in time
Dawn
for
now.
Carnival.
Okay.
Yes.
Napoleon Avenue, is it really finished?
It really is finished. So just in time for Carnival, neutral ground people can rejoice because they have bright green grass, like this green. They were just laying the remaining sod yesterday as I drove it. But from Claiborne almost to Tchoupitoulas, actually, to Constance, it's totally clear, 2 lanes in each direction. That's that Army Corps of Engineers project that was putting in the big box culvert underneath for drainage is finished, except for a few punch list items. Those will be handled after Mardi Gras and should not impact traffic in any major ways. Jefferson Avenue from Claiborne Avenue to Dryads is ongoing. There's northbound traffic that way, but no southbound traffic. That entire project is not going to be finished until early 2008.
Oh, those poor
Dryads
folks
to
on Jefferson.
Constance
It's been a
is
long one.
complete. Louisiana, Claiborne to Constance, that project also not complete until the end of 2018. So, you know, you can rejoice about Napoleon, and you can hope that all of these projects to improve drainage really do the trick as we start seeing major storms in the springtime. Claiborne Avenue, Monticello to Leonidas, the construction's ongoing, but that should be complete in March or April. So it's starting to look good on all of those big projects when we talk about Louisiana, Jefferson, and Napoleon, and Claiborne. Move over to Jackson Avenue. From Claiborne to Tchoupitoulas is a mess right now. It's a resurfacing project that has most of the roadway down, several layers of asphalt, so you know it's kind of like driving through landmines as you go through. That project will be complete sometime this spring, but throughout Mardi Gras and throughout the whole project, traffic will be going both ways on that. But get ready. Because the city is starting in on $2.4 billion worth of city and federal money together projects where they say they will have aggressive schedules to minimize the impact, but on average, 1 construction bid project will be opening each week beginning this time through 2020, a new project each week. It's a comprehensive citywide project where they looked at all of the streets in the city. 65% of them received a grade of poor or worse. It would take $5 billion to fix all the poor or worse streets. There's only $2.4 billion on the table, so they're not all going to get fixed.
That's a rating we can all definitely believe because we
it
drive
doesn't matter
these
where you
streets.
drive. You drive in Gentilly, Mid-City, Uptown,
Lakeview.
Downtown, Lakeview, the Ninth Ward. No matter where you drive, you're going to find a street where you go, people shouldn't have to drive like this. So hopefully many of those streets we think about that will be improved. You can look yourself at www.roadwork.nola.gov. You can put in your zip code and figure out when the projects near you are going to happen. But the first one of those is set to start in March, next month, in the Lakeview area. So
start figuring out your alternate routes.
yes.
Okay.
And along St. Charles Avenue, road work that people were worried about with Mardi Gras is finished, but that was just putting in ADA compliant sidewalks.
So we're going to see couches spring up again on Napoleon Avenue.
Yes,
Okay.
couches, ladders, you name it. People are
Right,
camped
right,
out there on portalets
Chairs,
all
barbecue
over
pits,
already.
et cetera, the whole
Yes.
thing.
And then no matter what we do, the
Yes.
city's built on soft land, and so it doesn't take long for it to start.
Well,
to,
you know, 65% receive the poor or worse grading. The other 35% will probably rotate down as the other streets get fixed. So it's a
All right.
revolving door of
All right,
bad
Don,
roads.
thanks for the update. We're going to go over to Arrow right now, and it is a busy, busy, busy weekend for us. Parades and basketball.
There's an editorial in this morning's Charlotte Observer newspaper. It's an angry editorial, and it says, New Orleans, not Charlotte, to host the NBA All-Star Game this weekend. And it deals with the fact how Charlotte had it, and they have the sign, Charlotte 2017 All-Star Game, and how Charlotte lost the All-Star Game. And it's angry, not at New Orleans, it's angry at the North Carolina legislature for letting this happen. You know, when the thing first emerged, it was explained as having to do with bathrooms and with transgender and with the argument about legislating what kind of bathroom people should use. But as even the editorial points out, it's much, much more than that. That the bill that they were dealing with, they say, was much more discriminatory all across the line in terms of jobs and all along the line. It also affected the laws in the city of Charlotte. And so seeing that made a lot more sense in terms of the NBA's decision. And it points out, you know, in New Orleans this weekend, the hotels are full. It says in Charlotte, there's a lot of hotel rooms, and you can get them at discounts this weekend. And this Sunday in the arena where the NBA All-Star would have been in Charlotte, there's some sort of a Christian music conference that's going to go on. So they're kind of feeling the repercussions of it in Charlotte. And meanwhile, New Orleans kind of got this on the rebound. In the short time that New Orleans has been in the NBA, this is the third time we've gotten an All-Star game. The first time was just pretty much to welcome us in the league. The second was to help after Katrina. And now this was really on the rebound because of what happened in Charlotte. And they figured New Orleans would be the best city to accommodate this quickly because it had the flexibility and it had the hotel rooms. It hits the first weekend of Mardi Gras parades, but if you look at the 2 weekends of Mardi Gras parades, they're totally different. The first weekend does not have the big crowds that the second weekend has. You go to any of the first weekend parades, and maybe it's like one row of people. If you did it next week, when you have Endymion and Bacchus, you couldn't accommodate that. The first weekend doesn't bring in the amount of tourists that the second weekend does. It brings in some, but not the same. But not the same amount. Plus, there are a couple of other conventions that were in town this weekend, and so yes, the city is going to be full. Yes, there'll be just enough Mardi Gras for people that come here to get a taste of Mardi Gras. And fortunately, even without the All-Star game, the first weekend, the parades march fairly early, and there's no Sunday night parade. It's always been that way. And of course, that's when the NBA All-Star game is going to be. And so we're going to be having a lot of activity, hitting a lot of different directions this weekend.
Yeah, really, a fun-filled weekend.
And
Steph?
there's something interesting going on with this game, too. It's not just that they're not happy with North Carolina. They are happy with Louisiana. They're happy with New Orleans' record on dealing with lesbian and gay, issues, transgender issues, and they're happy with Governor John Bel Edwards and his efforts to reduce discrimination. He has that executive order. He's fighting with Jeff Landry over it. But I went to an event this week where the mayor was there. The governor couldn't make it because of the special session. The NBA commissioner was there. Pelicans officials were there. They're all in on making it clear that this is a statement game, that they moved here because New Orleans can handle it, and New Orleans made it very easy for them, but they also moved here because they want to send a message of inclusion, and you see that those giant
the signs
equality
for every-
signs.
the ball
Those are
bounces the
sponsored,
same for
right?
everyone,
Sponsored by
or-
Nike. So it's really, there's a lot of politics hovering around this game, and it's interesting to kind of see the Saints and Pelicans organization involved in that too, because
Well, it's a good weekend for New Orleans. It's good to have them
It
here.
is, yes.
And just watch for street closures,
Yes.
because that's definitely going to be happening this weekend. Okay, back over to Katie. Jefferson Parish Finance Authority, you did some reporting on that, looking at some of the administrative type of spending. But first, why don't you quickly background us on what that authority is, what it
So
does?
the authority is a public trust, and it was started, back in the 70s in order to give people more access to affordable housing, to encourage home ownership. That's its reason for being. When the bond market dried up, they started to have this program where they give people down payment assistance, and so you can, in a regular FHA loan, you need 3 to 4% down, right, to get into a house. Well, this program gives people 3 to 4% down payment assistance grants in order to get into a house. Well, on the flip side of that, what happens when you get that down payment assistance is you end up paying a higher interest rate. The authority requires the lender to tack on an additional, 0.5% minimum onto what you're paying in interest. So you're getting maybe, let's say on a $150,000 house, a $4,500 down payment. You're going to end up paying $27,000 more in interest over the life of that loan because you're getting that,
Higher interest rate.
Yeah, because you're getting that grant up front. It's advertised as a grant, as sort of free money, but it's obviously not free money. Even though the money's not going to pay the grant back directly, you're obviously paying it in the long run.
Over time. But then you also looked at some of the money that's spent on the administrative level.
Absolutely. There are a lot of questions. There's sort of a battle going on within the Board of Trustees over the Jefferson Parish Finance Authority in particular, in that they meet once a week, which some of the trustees say, why do we do that? All the other finance authorities around the state meet once a month. The one in New Orleans does not give per diems to its Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees in Jefferson are getting $150 every time they go to a meeting, and then the trustees are also getting $150 per diems anytime they go to any sort of event related to the authority. So they have these realtor luncheons twice a year, and some of these trustees are getting $150 and a free lunch to go to these luncheons, which seems a bit excessive.
So you interviewed Jennifer Van Franken, a councilwoman, who's sort of questioning some of these costs.
She is. She is sort of saying, number one, is this program doing what it's meant to do? Which obviously most boards and commissions should be overseeing something that serves a public purpose, right? And then she's also saying, well, are we spending too much on it? And are we getting the best bang for our buck, so to speak, in running this program? And what's it doing for Jefferson Parish? Now, this program's also in St. Tammany Parish. It's also in St. Charles Parish. It was in Calcasieu Parish. The Jefferson Parish Finance Authority running all of those different programs.
Oh, really?
Who has authority over this?
The parish council, it's sort of a quasi-governmental entity. So it's one of those, governmental boards that operates on its own, but yet is closely tied to Jefferson Parish. So if anything, it would be the Jefferson Parish Council that would have oversight. So Jennifer Van Franken would have oversight. But this Board of Trustees is the be-all, end-all of making decisions about what happens with the authority. And so that's why this battle among the trustees is so interesting.
And then quickly, how is it funded?
It's funded through the fees that they collect from these down payment grants. It's funded from the past bond issues and things, and proceeds that they make from financial transactions.
And so is there going to be any sort of inspector general investigation or anything, or looking at these costs?
There is. The IG is in there. He's had his representatives at every meeting. So.
All right. We'll be looking for more, Katie. Thanks a lot. Over to Steph right now, and just sort of a quick recap of really a tough assignment, going to D.C. for the Mardi Gras Ball.
Painful.
And it was a wheeler dealer weekend.
It was. So there's, 3,000 people, probably more than that, 3,000 fit into the ballroom. Go to a lot of people from Louisiana, people in Washington, lobbyists with ties to Louisiana politics. And it's, on one level, it's a big party. They have a ball. There are princesses and festival queens from around the state. There's a parade staged inside the hotel ballroom, beads, all of that.
Big floats, too?
Not huge floats, because it's inside. Yeah. So blinky beads. I was walking outside in Washington with my coat on, and a woman came up and said, "What's going on in there?" Because I still had my blinky beads on. But there's also some business, and there's actually a lot of politicking too going on. In terms of business, the governor was there, the mayor of New Orleans, certainly all the members of Congress, a number of legislators. There's since Katrina, we've always had we've always needed money from the federal government, really, and this has been an occasion to get a lot of people from Louisiana to storm Capitol Hill, go have meetings with agencies, HUD, meet the new Trump officials. There was a lot of that going on. The governor is trying to get an extra $2 billion for flood relief. And then last week, Monday, we had those tornadoes. So they were working really hard to get a disaster declaration, which they did get while everybody was up there. And then politicking, boy, everywhere. You just sit, it's the Washington Hilton. They renamed the bar the 65th Parish for the duration of this event. And you just really have to sit there and watch politics happen around you.
Must be fascinating.
See who's talking to whom. And this year we had basically everybody running for state treasurer was there. And they were meeting with really everybody who might be a key supporter in different parts of the state. John Schroeder, the state representative from St. Tammany, he's running for treasurer, and he said, he's trying to meet people from different parts of the state so that when he calls them later, they'll put a face to a name. He said he went through a lot of lozenges. I saw him everywhere. Julie Stokes from Jefferson Parish also running. And then there was kind of a subterranean campaign going on, people hoping to get appointed to become U.S. attorney or federal judge in the new Trump administration. So there were lawyers there, district judges, and they were really just trying to get some face time with, trying to figure out who the key decision makers were, probably the two senators, Cassidy and Kennedy. So they were kind of being stalked by anyone who might want one of these appointments.
So Louisiana really descends upon Washington, D.C. over this weekend,
yes,
it sounds like.
It does,
And
it's a raucous time.
And also we have some flood relief coming in a little bit sooner than they thought, right? The $430 million?
Yes, there was.
HUD approved that?
It was approved,
Yeah.
and actually HUD said, good job getting it through quickly,
Yeah.
which is interesting because there's been some criticism about the pace, but the regulations really are onerous.
Okay, good. Thanks, Stephanie.
Of course.
All right, I think it's time now to look ahead.
Okay, well, you should see a picture of a rubber duck coming up at some point. Okay, this duck is going to make Mardi Gras history this week. Okay? The Blaine Curran organization has a new machine. It's a robot with sculptures, float figures, and it made several figures which you'll see this Mardi Gras. But the first one that'll be on the street will be in the Muses Parade, that rubber duck, and so it'll be the first robot-made float figure in New Orleans Carnival.
And it's a rubber ducky.
A rubber
And
duck.
We'll be looking for it. Katie.
Well, I just wanted to give a little preview again about what's coming up tonight because it's another look at all of this medical spending. So it's not my piece, it's David's piece, but we've been kind of working on this series together because we feel like it's really important. And he is going to be taking a look more deeply at some of those facility fees. He's going to be taking a look at physicians who are out of network, even though they're at in-network hospitals for people. So that's an issue that people get when they get their bills.
Okay, we've been looking for that. Don.
Right now, through February 23rd, the city's pilot bike sharing program, together with Social Bicycles, there are 7 stations throughout downtown in the French Quarter where you can pick up a bike and drop it off at another station. I've used a service like that in Chicago. It's a lot of fun, and we're trying it here in New Orleans.
Okay, very good. Steph.
Okay, Muses is getting a second plug. I'm a member. The theme is Secret. It's a really good one this year. Look for me, hopefully, on Float 16, upper level, passenger side, and the themes are always very topical, and this year it fits in well with the All-Star Weekend. The theme of my float involves transgender bathrooms.
Okay, and it also has a rubber ducky. All
And
right.
it has a rubber
Thank
ducky.
you guys for being here. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great weekend. We'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.